What is going on, guys? What's up? What's up? What's up? But Eric in the house, Rob. Thanks for tuning in. Eric, are you home? You at your computer? What is going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in. You guys know the normal routine. We're going to wait a few moments here and gather some audience. If the audio is good, thumbs up in the comments. Let me know. Make sure everything's good to go there so I'm not talking to nobody. Eric, if you're available here soon, I can have you tune in to the StreamYard and we can talk about some of the nationals and your first impressions of the new 8-scale buggy. Let me know. But yeah, we're going to be doing a lot of reviewing today. March has been pretty crazy. We did the Desert Classic at Hobby Action, which was pretty fun and awesome. We did the Roar 8-scale Fuel Nationals. Obviously, for those who are custom racing the Nationals, the dates got moved earlier this year just because of weather reasoning in Arizona. So we raced the Nationals. It felt like it was just a few months ago we raced last year's Nationals. But it was a good time. And then last weekend, I attended the first round of the NCTS Carpet Series that J Concepts puts on. It was at 702 Raceway. So I went from running 10 scale dirt to 8 scale bumpy off road nitro, and then back to 10 scale carpet electric. So several different surfaces. It's been pretty crazy. It's been fun. It kind of keeps me centered as far as not overthinking in one genre of cars. So so it looks like the audio is all good. Got some people from YouTube tuning in. So for those who don't know, I do stream on Facebook and YouTube as in together. So I see questions from coming in on the YouTube side or vice versa. So that's typically why some of the answers are kind of random for you guys that don't know what's going on. But yeah, so I'm going to be copying this link. I got to send it to somebody. 1 second. Okay, we are back. So, anyways, for those who have any questions in the live session, don't hesitate to ask. It doesn't matter if it's for 8 scale, 10 scale related tires, electronics. This is just a general video live session that I'm doing, regrouping from the events that I travel to, things that I'm seeing, new setup items, new hot setup stuff. Future events and stuff like that. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the 8 scale stuff because we just kind of released our new B4 and B4E platform stuff. I have some notes here, some build notes that I would like to go over, some setup stuff. I know as we speak, people are getting their kits in the mail that they order. People were able to get those. Hobby shops, some customers may or may not have gotten them yet. So if you have any questions about that stuff, don't hesitate to ask. I will be doing some more video stuff, actually some more build tips once I get my other kit in. Um, some generic pro build tips, building how do I build the diffs, how do I build um, the differential ring and pinion shimming, how to build the shocks, this stuff like that's super critical. What makes a good race car good. So, yeah, so I got, I guess we can kind of talk about the Desert Classic. Yeah, so Hobby Action, that's the home of the Desert Classic. It is one of the better facilities that we get to race at throughout the year. Obviously, it's my local home track, so um, it's always feels pretty special being there. I love that Larry and the group of guys have a ton of passion and effort on building the layouts. The amount of time and effort it does take to do all that stuff is a lot of work. So a lot of props to those guys for sure. The actual event itself, I thought initially it felt like it wasn't going to be that many entries when we first got there because they started practicing on Tuesday. I was there Wednesday practicing, I think, so I had a ton of practice. Thursday was basically the first official practice. That's when some of the pro guys came in, guys from out of state. So initially, it seemed a little light for entries, and then Thursday came in, and it was like a hurricane of people, and they had a really good entry count. I'm pretty sure it was a sold out event. So basically, ran the B6.3 and the B74.1, and had a good time. We made some good changes throughout the weekend. I ended up qualifying second in two-wheel drive buggy, and I believe fourth in four-wheel drive, and that's actually where I ended up finishing the weekend. Had some opportunities to win the two-wheel drive class. I won A1, or excuse me, won A2, finished second in A1, and kind of blew out a little bit in A3. But big props to Dakota. Had a good, solid weekend, TQing two-wheel drive and winning. And then in four-wheel drive, it seemed like four-wheel drive, it was weird. I struggled a little bit with steering in the four-wheel drive car. At one point, I took off the front sway bar on my car and just ran it without the bar just to get the car to steer. That had some good potential. That's how I actually raced with it. I thought I had my best run on that, but I still got some tweaks that I like to do the next time I go out running on dirt. I do have some ideas to find some more steering. My previous setup set for you guys that you've seen on Clay, I was running the outside hole in the front arm for the forward dive car, and I currently switched back to the inside hole, which had good steering. It jumped and landed really good. So I think we're pretty close on finding that extra consistency and speed. Not quite sure what I can do at the moment to really find that extra gear for the car, but I know for a fact that the diff oils differences that I used to run and run now, it seems like I'm running just the traditional 10 front, 500K in the center, and 7 in the rear. Seems to be pretty good. The other thing that I kind of been noticing for those who run, so this is like a mod in stock difference. So I assume most of the people that are watching this stream run the stock 13.5 class, which they run the bigger battery, which if I ran 13.5 forward drive, I'd definitely run the biggest milliamp battery possible just to keep the milliamps higher throughout the run. But there is a couple of different setup things that I've noticed when running a lot of weight like that towards the rear of the car. The camber link settings that you run out here, the length and the height comes into a pretty big factor. For those who might be able to see, the actual camber link mount, the aluminum piece on my car is flipped. That's why I use the aluminum shims for the spacing, so I can flip it. Basically, the nub is facing to the outer part of the wheel. What that does, it actually lengthens the camber link longer, even though that I have a 1 mil shim to space it back in. It's basically like 2 millimeters longer by just simply spacing or flipping the actual aluminum mount, and then I respace it in 1 millimeter, so it's only a 1 millimeter difference. It's a little confusing, but if you put it by the kit, the mount is facing in, and I simply face it out to shift the ball stud longer, and then I space it back in with 1 millimeter ball stud washers. You can't do that with, you're not able to do that with the carbon fiber factory team shims because it's a one piece and the actual mount itself has a little bubble where you're not able to do that. But back to what I was saying with modified and stock, when running a smaller milliamp battery, it's substantially lighter in the rear end. So the reason why I'm making the link longer is to get the car to roll more onto the rear, because with the lighter battery, there's not much actual weight transferring to the back of the car. When you're running a heavier battery, traditionally you would want a little bit of a shorter link to help support that extra weight in the rear end and not to like drag the rear end around, and it will basically not have good steering or good turn-in feeling. So for those who run stock, I don't really recommend maybe changing the link longer, especially if the rear end's pretty heavy. I know for those stock guys, they try to make their car as light as possible with the drive line, but as far as power related goes and battery, probably wouldn't recommend the thin battery option for that. So that was basically the big key things that I've been noticing for the four-wheel drive car. Obviously, for dirt off-road, you're able to run the plastic gear internal gears, which is a lot lighter. Definitely helps a ton, handling reasons. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the four-wheel drive car. I have a few questions coming in, which I'll get to here shortly. I do want to show you guys that my battery is all the way forward. So that's basically how I run the electronics. And then my two-wheel drive car will kind of answer some questions. Okay, so kind of going through some questions, a little bit all over the place. Yeah, so the B74, the front arm, if you run the inside hole, traditionally is a little bit more steering and the thinner bars for your question. So I have some there's some 8 skill questions that I will get to here shortly, but let's kind of run through the Desert Classic and kind of switch over to the Nitro scene. Two-wheel drive hobby action setup changes. So there's been a couple things that been back and forth with obviously the B6.3 kits come with the 73 millimeter arms. I think out of the box, that is the most predictable for the average person to pick up and just drive and have traction out of the box. I actually raced with the 73 millimeter arms at the BK Classic last year and thought it was one of the best two-wheel drives I've ever driven at Hobby Action. Now, this is definitely layout dependent too. So recently we started to do some more running with the two-wheel drives and on carpet and stuff for future development on trying the long arms again. Obviously, we offer both options, so this isn't really like a special thing. We've always offered both options. So it just happened that the kit cars come with the 73 millimeter arms, and you have the option to switch to the 75 millimeter arms and change the pivot narrow. So I've been running the 75 millimeter arms. As you can see, my chassis is a little bit worn out because of Hobby Action, but 75 millimeter arms, the narrow pivot seems to be, for me, with the traction that we run on at the big races, it's more than enough traction to handle the longer arm. It seems that a lot of these layouts are really high speed, a lot of on-power steering is needed. It just seems like the 75 is more preferred for some of us guys. Now, I definitely think club level wise, if the traction isn't nearly that great, I still would recommend the 73 millimeter arms. So for those who run at Hobby Action on a normal basis, it's probably safe to say that the 73 is probably more preferred, which I believe we did have a setup sheet for the BK Classic. That's basically the kit settings or the kit pieces that you're able to accomplish from just buying the kit and just building it, minus a couple of the different configurations with the pill inserts. So my car has it built with the long arm, the narrow pivot. Recently, discovery that I've been doing, again for modified, I actually built my car with the thin battery. This is actually one of the first times where I've changed my weight bias of the car, which I was actually pretty stoked with. Definitely some positives to be taken. First of all, for whatever reason, Hobby Action, we had a little bit of bad luck. A few of us in some of the practice seating rounds, me, Dustin, and Aiden, somehow turned out to be we're in the B qualifier for the qualifiers. Our seating time was good, but wasn't nearly as good as the heat that didn't get water. So I ended up being in the B heat and racing my way into the A main from the B heat. Had some pretty crazy good runs. Dakota kind of edged me out, but was the first time I ran my car pretty light. I think my car weighed like 15, 20-ish, which I know you stock guys run your car pretty light, so this could be something for you guys too. I didn't really change much with the springs. The shock oil and stuff is pretty much the same, 3230. The one thing that I did notice that was a big change, and I think it's seasonal related, summer versus the winter. The roll centers start to become a pretty big factor when changing the actual overall weight of the car. Traditionally, with the car setup, you would run. I mean, my normal baseline is running, or used to be running +2, but as of recently, I've been running +1 in the rear, especially with the long arm. If you are running with the short arm, it's possible that you are able to get the roll center to work with the +2 rear axle height, but for sure with the long arm, 1 is about as high as you want to go with the traction. So in the front, I run 1.5 if the grip's really high. I've been using the black pills. 1.5 axle height. That's something that I'm pretty happy with as a good tuning option. And then with the 1.5, I run 1.5 millimeters on the inner. One thing too that I've been noticing with the traction levels, this could be something for you guys that race regularly on high bike clay. You get locally, I always hear it, and it kind of happened to me at the Desert Classic, which if you have a good balanced car, it doesn't normally change. But if things are close to the edge of being too much traction or not enough traction, things start to fall apart fast. So what I've been noticing with the traction is if you feel like your car is going into the corner and has good traction coming in, and then as you get in the middle of the apex, the car just wants to kind of slide around, it like loses traction. Well, I've been kind of finding out that that is causing by you're not losing traction, you're actually like overloading the tires and they can't handle any more pressure. So the fixes of that is essentially raising your roll center, such as lowering this inner ball stem mount, or you can raise the pill inserts up one step from where you're at. So I was traditionally running 3 mils on the inner, and then went to 2, and it completely. This is for Q3 that I did this for, and completely like made my car so much more predictable to drive. It like held the traction better through the whole corner, and my car was awesome. And then in the last A main A3, the traction came up even more, and my car did exactly what it did before I changed that ball stud washer a day earlier. So it ended up having another step of traction, and it like overloaded the tire even when I already had changed it. So that means I probably could go even lower on the inner or raise these pills up front, the C mount and D mount up one step higher from where I'm at. So which just kind of tells me that going forward, I'll probably run my current C and D pill inserts is middle row, one in on the C, and then down and in on the D mount. That's running with the narrow pivot long arm setup. So what I'll probably do, so this is 2-degree anti-squat. What I'll probably do the next time I'm out running a super high bike track, I'll probably run the C mount up and in, and the D mount middle row in, which is one step higher. So it seems like I was saying, seasonal related. It seems like because it was kind of warm during the hobby action, so it seemed like if wintertime you can run the roll centers a little bit lower than normal, and then summertime it seems like you have to run the roll centers a little bit higher. So keep that in mind for those who run out at like CRC in Columbus, out there in Michigan, in the cold weather states. For sure, something to keep an eye on. I don't know if the high roll center stuff is going to work for those cold tracks like I was mentioning. I think you can for sure get away with running the roll centers a little bit lower just because the traction is just slightly different. So I know it was a lot of information about that, but I really wanted to talk to you guys about the roll center stuff for the 2-wheel drive. It was a pretty big change. So we got some questions coming in. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We got Joe Bornhorse in here asking some setup help for his S-Works 8-scale buggy. Sorry, I can't really help you out with that, but we'll move on. Tyler Jones is in here asking about his techno setup help. People are just tuning in. What's going on, guys? Kaylin's in here. What's going on? Dave, Chris, Carlos, you guys are awesome. So that's it for the two-wheel drive stuff. I'm pretty stoked on getting out there next with that. And finally, we can get into some 8-scale talk. So, Enzo, have you ever tried taping your battery in your B6.3 dirt versus using the plastic brace? There's been a couple events that I've double-sided taped my battery into. I just not really because of trying to get different flex in the car, but traditionally I always try to run the strap. That's my 2 cents. So, two-wheel drive, I run 25 kickup and 0 caster. Adam Peters is in the house. What's going on, brother? Do you ever mess around moving the rear shims 2 millimeters in front or behind the arm? Yeah, that is something that I do. If you do run the short chassis, I like running the arms back. If you run the long chassis, I like running the arms forward. That's kind of my go-to standard shimming setup. So, kind of get over to talking about some 8-scale stuff. I have some build notes that I like to talk about. I got a new question here. So, some build points or build tips that I like to go into initially for you guys that are building the new 8-scale B4 and B4E. For those who got the car and they're building the diffs currently, I don't run any of the diff shims. I will be doing a video more on it, but for those who are doing it now, I can briefly tell you that I don't use any of the diff shims. I build it without the shims. I actually mix my oils in the front 10 and 7 mix, so it's like an 8.5 split. So 8.5, 8.5, 4 is kind of my starting diff oil package. And for those who have like a diff scale, if you're building the diffs dry, I like to use 2 grams of diff fluid in the diffs. 2.5 to 2 grams of oil is what I use for the diffs. As far as other build notes that I have, there's a couple of I have my buggy right here. I was just trying to fit on a different body, that's seeing if it fits. Some of the slop in the front, you are able to change the shimming. I use 2.9 shims, 1.9 in the front and 1.9 in the rear, just to get the front to back slop. I mean, this is my car is all prepped and ready for the Seco Nitro Blast. Take my body off. I will be going over some of the key changes that I made during the Nationals. So here is my Nitro buggy prepped and ready for the Seco Nitro Blast, which is going to be next week in White Pine, Tennessee. This is basically my car setup from the Roar Nationals. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a little bit different for Seco Nitro, of course. Some of the key changes that we made was shortening this rear link to the outer position hole on the arm or the tower, and then running the middle location on the factory team hubs. So this middle location on the hubs is the same as the kit middle positioning on the B4 hub. I got CBAs in my car. That's what I ran the whole time. I got the 30-gram weight in the back, as you can see back here. Now, most of you are probably going to ask, why did I go to the shorter rear link? It seems like with the ungroomed tracks, the traction is a little bit inconsistency with the bumps, the dust, the rocks, especially at this Nationals. The shorter rear link, raising the roll center, is a much more predictable, consistent package than the longer link. You'll have a much more longer feel for the traction that you're getting out of the tires in the car. But along with that, it's also a combination of running the appropriate rear spring. So I'm running the brown rear spring, which is pretty soft. Our normal standard spring is black. So it's a step softer in spring. So for those who are getting into the nitro and need to know like an arsenal of what springs to get, I think it's pretty safe to say to get the green spring, the black spring, and the brown. I know a few people run the white, but I think if you run the outside hole, those are the 3 springs that you really need for the different tractions that we see. So the next thing that I did for you guys, I wanted to show you is, so the our 8-skill C and D mounts have always been, when the pill inserts are equal to each other, like middle from the kit, it's 2-degree anti-squat. So what I have done is I put on the low roll center C mount, which drops the anti-squat down 1 degree. So if you run the pill inserts middle with the C low roll center mount, it's actually 1 degree anti-squat. So I have the ability to get 1, 2, or 3 versus 2, 3, or 4 from the kit. So I recommend getting the low roll center, the low roll center C mount, so you have the ability to get the less anti-squat. Seems recently that the higher roll center is working really good with the less anti-squat. So for those who are looking for the rear end to like corner under acceleration and accept the bumps without like shattering the rear end, the anti-squat being less, like 1 degree, is definitely preferred. So that's a pretty big combination with the setup. So during the Nationals, I ran 1 degree the whole time of anti-squat. I was running the traditional longer link, and then for the main event, I switched over. We did some testing. Kurt recommended going to the outer camber link positioning and going to the brown rear spring, and that helped my car a ton in the main. I had pretty good pace. That was the best my car was the whole weekend. There was some light at the end of the tunnel in some of the qualifiers, but I think I qualified like 11th or 10th, which wasn't that great. I felt like my car was a lot better than my qualifying showed. So, in all honesty, with tie braking on the first lap, I think at best it was a 4th or 5th place car with him in the mix. Obviously, with him out of the mix, I was battling for a podium position basically the whole entire race. The event was pretty crazy. It being a local track to me, that was really the first time the track was actually like that. I've been there like literally 3 times. Once was the warm up, another time was a practice session, and then the next time was the Nationals. So it's a fairly new facility for us, and I'm excited to do some more running there. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, I just think the car in the main was pretty good. Mason Fuller drove a pretty awesome race. I actually had a problem at the start that qualified eight. Basically, started the main eighth, and the first corner I got hit by like Cole Ogden or something. Not really necessarily intentionally, but went back to last, and I was a few seconds behind last for the first few minutes of the race, and I worked my way back up. I ran green reflexes, which I thought were the tire of choice for me. I started with the same tire as Dakota and Mayfield, which is our new Recon in the blue compound, but the way my car was set up, it seemed like it liked the softer compound, which I thought I had my tires from the main event, but I might have put them away somewhere, and they didn't really. They had good wear, but it definitely wasn't bald. You would think it would be a lot more worn out than it was, but our compounds with JC are pretty amazing, and I can't complain about how they're wearing and how they're performing. They're pretty awesome. So, yeah, I think overall, once the car is released on the website, we'll have the setup sheet posted, and we'll get the national setup sheet posted for those who run on the outdoor ungroomed tracks. And then, of course, we're going to the Psycho Nitro event this weekend, which is more of the traditional events that a lot of the local customers do around the U.S. Those are the kind of the must-do events. So we'll hopefully put in some good team effort there. It's going to be me attending, Aiden Horn, Cole Tollard, Evan Vale. I believe there's several more people attending from the team, but should be able to get some good handful of setups. I know this past weekend the RCGP ran, and our other guys did very good. Cole Tollard ended up getting second overall in the 1 hour final. So we'll have some setup sheets for some of those tracks out there south. I'm pretty stoked on that. So the sway bar and diff oil stuff from the old generation car is all pretty much the same. I run a 2-1 front bar and a 2-4 rear bar. I don't really like going up in rear bar. I think 2.5 would be like the max. So that's what I ended up running. Charles Hicks inside, long rear link with green rear spring worked pretty good for me on main day. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's definitely a fine balance. The longer link definitely rolls a lot more, and the stiffer spring, like how Charles mentioned, regains the support. So there's definitely some some cons and pros of all this stuff. So you can't, completely make your car super soft springs, super soft roll centers, and super soft shock oil. That stuff just doesn't mix. You need to have a support piece, a soft piece for traction, and it's definitely a fine balance. So I ran my roll center really, really high, which means really stiff, and then I ran a really soft rear spring to get back the traction. So Charles is basically saying he ran a longer camber link, which is like a little bit lower roll center, but a much stiffer spring. So as you can see, like there's a counterpart to all this stuff. So, I mean, obviously it's easy for me to say that the new car is dramatically better. I'm not gonna lie. The key differences from our old generational kit into this kit is from building it right out of the box. It's a dramatic difference of performance. Our old car out of the box was honestly lacked a little bit of consistency, drivability, and traction. This car is much more predictable and more one-to-one on the steering wheel than our old generation car. I still think that there's some similar characteristics that this car has, like the old car, which we are still in the process of trying to fix as far as like figuring out setup opportunities to open some new windows for us to test and to run. So it seems like we're starting to find this stuff, the roll center stuff, kind of towards the higher roll centers, which is what we're doing now. So I still think there's a lot of more learning to be made. But if you are trying to ask if this car out of the box is better than our old car, the answer is it's 100 times better than the old generation car. So that's kind of what some of the biggest things that you'll see with this front tower. It's so much wider up here. The pivot is so much wider because all this stuff got shifted out towards the wheel to change the kingpin inclination, um, to help with the steering, articulation on the wheel being super smooth. The rear end doesn't like shift around when you use the wheel input. So that's some of the biggest things. So this is actually going to be our first time at a race time event with the new car. We've only really ran it outdoors. So a lot of our testing that we did showed that it would be consistent being better on this stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know how long until the new Truggy, but I'm hoping to get the new front end stuff if we decide to do that route, go down that route with the Truggy. I think what we did to the buggy will be a good addition to the truck, but unfortunately, that is not my department to make the final decision. Any tips for the Psycho Nitro Blast? Yes. The best thing I can say to do is to really trust your eyes. The track is ginormous. The track is very large. You're super wide open, and you're going to probably turn it into pipes, jump outside the track, jump into the infield, jump into other lanes. The best thing to do is just to start off super slow and consistent. Just try to get around, figure out your depth perception, get used to that, walk the layout once or twice before the event starts, and start off slow and end strong. That's kind of my suggestion. Corey Cliff in the house. What's going on, buddy? So yeah, that's pretty much my setup stuff for the nationals. There wasn't much front end changes. I basically kept the front end pill inserts and everything all the same. I ran the 5-hole pistons, gray front spring, brown rear spring. So yeah, pretty stoked about that. So see if there's any questions that I may have missed. So we still have one more event that I went to, which was the 702 event, carpet running. Um, yeah, so Benjamin, I mixed the diff oils. If you have a scale, I put 1 gram of 10 in the front and 1 gram of 7, and that's roughly 8.5. So you can buy a factory team scale on the Associated's website, or if you have a scale from home, whatever is easiest. Patrick Rossiter is asking about the most noticeable difference, in my opinion, between running a standard 4S battery versus the two shorties on the e-buggy. Good question. The biggest thing that I've been noticing is the cornering balance, um, left and right, and turning, and then under acceleration and braking. It seems like the car doesn't pitch as much weight nearly as much, which with e-buggy with the big brick battery, it has a ton of front and rear side to side motion, and the new e-buggy design with the two shorty packs in the back changes that a lot. So almost drives more like the nitro buggy, although the e-buggy still has a more front weight bias towards the front. So there are times where you have to run the front oil a little bit thicker than the nitro car. Not all the time, but it is something to keep in mind, or a stiffer front spring. So traditionally, in the years past, I've run the white front spring on the nitro car, white or gray, and then like for instance with e-bug, I always run gray. Sometimes I run blue. So as you can see, like with the nitro buggy, I'm almost running a softer front spring, and then the e-buggy, I have the stiffer one traditionally most of the time. Uh, on your last setup sheet, so that he was asking that I glued the foams to the wheels. What do you think that does to the handling differences? So depending on the traction and the compound, if it's really high bite and high speed, and you're running still like a blue or a green compound tire, I assume you're talking about 8 scale. This just helps the stability a ton. So traditionally, if you're running a super soft compound and it's a big open track and there's decent grip, I'll glue the foam to help with like the stability, which helps cornering faster. Sometimes it helps with a little bit more traction or consistent traction. So I always glue like my truck foam just because it's a lot bigger of a diameter tire. There's a lot more foam movement. So I always glue the truck foams. Um, so I think we can kind of talk about the carpet race. I've been to 702 a tons of times. They are great people. Dwayne and his family put on a good show, obviously with the carpet track. In the years past, that they've had the same carpet since I believe they switched to their new location. So the carpet was a little bit more worn out, which I was a little bit afraid. I thought maybe the traction wasn't going to be nearly as good, but the traction was really good. I basically showed up with my Florida Carpet Champ setup, which I did do a setup, um, a setup sheet with Brent, and I can post it in the comments. So let me know if that works for you guys in the comments, if you guys can see that setup sheet. Yeah, it should work pretty good. Trying to save it on my end. Okay. So I did that. So that's my setup sheet from the 702 carpet race for the B6.3. I'm going to do another side post when the event, or when this is over, for you guys. I know several of you guys were asking about the setup sheet the other night. Um, So yeah. So anyways, about the tires and the track. So the year before or last year, we ran the twin pins and Swagger front tires, and this year we ran the Fuzz Bites front and rear. Um, it seemed like the Fuzz Bites, with them being directional, just have a lot more steering and just more corner speed. They are a little bit more difficult to drive, but if you set up your car a little bit differently, um, accommodate for the changes of how it feels, it's overall a better tire window. Obviously, that's on the black carpet. I don't know for a fact if that works for like the office gray carpet. I know Northwest Hobbies is the gray carpet. That's where the next NCTS J Concepts round is at, and the Roar Nationals for carpet. So I don't know for a fact if that's what you're going to want there, but it's definitely something that will be a new window for us to test. Um, So I know the best thing to do on carpet to make your car a little bit easier to drive is to glue your front sidewalls. This is something that we do in a 110 scale off-road slicks, is to glue the front sidewalls or to use our new like tire sidewall bands. But for carpet, we don't have sidewall bands for carpet. We just glue the front sidewall um, a good amount. Sometimes it flakes off and then you re-glue it and then you're good to go. So that helps with the steering a ton. I have my carpet car right here. Um, had a pretty good showing. Had some opportunities to win. I won A1 and got second in A2, and me and Brock were battling out in A3, and I made a boner error on the center section, and went too wide, flipped over, and that was it. Brock had a good showing for just throwing down carpet for the year. I thought we were on pace, if not faster than Brock on his home track. So I'm looking forward to running the next time at the Northwest Hobbies track. The last time I went there, I didn't do that great. So um, looking forward to getting some revenge and put on a good showing. I am also running the 75 millimeter arms on carpet as well. So I switched over to the long arm. That was the first time I ran the long arm in a long time on carpet. The past few events on carpet, like the 702 last year event, we debuted the B7, or excuse me, the B6.3, and then the Florida Carpet Champs, we ran the B6.3 from basically the 702 debut. So looking forward to starting with the long arm setup for the Northwest Hobbies track. As you can see, this is the only car that I have my battery double sided tape because I cut the. I don't think it's fully necessary quite yet, but I was doing some testing and moved my battery even further forward than what you could get. So I had some steering problems initially. My car was like pushing off the track. I have the steel front bulkhead. I had my battery really far forward. Um, the steel servo weight, and then the steel ESC weight, and definitely had probably so much steering it pushed is what we called it. So I was running the yellow front spring, went to the red front spring, shocks leaned in. It helped a ton for steering. So definitely keep in mind if you have a lot of weight in the front and your car kind of has a slight push on power or off power, going up in spring rate will help a ton. So for the most part, I ran the +2 rear axle height, the +2 diff height, and the +2 front axle height. Everything else is pretty much standard for the setup stuff. So the setup, I put a link in the comments for you guys for the two-wheel drive. My four-wheel drive setup, we won't really need to discuss too much about the four-wheel drive running at 702. Let's just say I had a hard time keeping some wheel nuts on. So we're investigating some of the things that we can do. It seems like it's just more of a problem for the modified guys. They have a lot of power. So don't worry for you stock guys that run the 13.5 class. It doesn't seem to be affecting anybody in that division. So that's about it for the four-wheel drive. But as far as setup goes, the car was working really good until the tires would fall off. I ran basically my same setup that I ran last year when I was there at the 702 race. So that's posted on rc10.com. Reading a question. Yeah, so there's a couple things that you can do with the B6 style hubs. They are directional. There's a left side and right side because there's an offset for the length and wheelbase. You are able to put the right on the left and left on the right, which offsets the wheelbase further back. So you are able to achieve a longer wheelbase with running the hubs back and then running them flipped. I did not do that. Minor standard middle on the hub width or the wheelbase, and then I just run the wheelbase shim long. I do run the black inserts because I like to run the 1.5 degree anti-squat. So mine are with the long arm. My pill inserts are middle on the C and then down and in on the D mount. So I'm not sure if you're able to see it, but the setup sheet shows what pill inserts are that I'm running and go from there. Drew, what's going on, buddy? You gonna be at looks like you're gonna be at Psycho Nitro Blast. I like it. Should be a good time. Pretty excited to get the car out there on the track. I'm currently working on my truggy. We're just cleaning it up. It's ready for some shocks. So that pretty much covers everything, guys. The next time that I probably will go live will be after Psycho Nitro. I think we're going to do some more video stuff. So once the new B4 gets into people's hands, we're going to do some more build tips and some live videos. So one last question. What are your thoughts on the track layout for this year's Psycho Nitro Blast? I mean, honestly, until you're there in person and see it, it's pretty easy to draw something on paper. But I mean, those guys, Bobby Moore, and those guys that put on a hell of a show every time we go to those race time events. Can't thank all those guys that put in the time and effort for a good weekend. Bobby with building the track and his crew. So Dave Lycum and his crew doing a really good job. I know Dave personally, and probably one of the best event planners out there on putting on a good show. So pretty excited to see Dave. For those who've never gone to one of his events, they definitely don't disappoint. Plenty of track time, a lot of bang for your buck, and it's always a good time. So there's a lot of guys that travel there, regardless of which team you're on, to ask for setup help and questions to be answered. A lot of the team guys are there to help you out, so don't hesitate to come up and ask us. And yeah, I think it should be a good time. So I think that does it. about it. Ron got in his last question. What starter box do you use for the RC8 T3.2? I used the Associated starter box for both cars. They fit both, even the new buggy, and that does it. Alrighty, guys, I'm tuning off. I'm gonna go get some food. I am starving. So, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. We will do another live video a few weeks after in the next couple of weeks. So, thanks again, and see you in the next one. Peace.